Hello, people of God. We want to welcome you into our broadcast today with a topic behind the scene. Behind the scene is a message or a program that the Lord has given to us to take time and share some of the things that happen behind the scene in ministry that probably we will not easily find in the public domain. So today I want to focus on what happened when it comes to financial management, and probably these are going to be several series of this topic that we're going to be looking at. How do we overcome financial failure, and how do we manage the money of God? Because when we say money belongs to God, what exactly does it mean? And what does it mean to be able to handle those finances that come into ministry correctly? Because many people have been misunderstood or have misunderstood a lot of things that has to do with kingdom finances and what is the right way of handling it. So these and many more we're going to be sharing in this behind the scene in the next couple of sessions or in the next couple of series. But we want to encourage you, if you have just logged on for the first time, we want to encourage you to like this broadcast if what we are saying here is a blessing to you. And also we want to invite you, to make a comment what is blessing you, share your thought with us, how you see it. And don't forget, this is about our own personal ministry, precisely how God has helped me in the journey of developing for over 20-something years since I answered the call, and how things has been unfolding personally in my own personal ministry. And this is the things we're going to be sharing, and of course how we the different kind of experiences that we have been having as a church and as a movement. Because as of today that we speak to you, New International Church, which happens to be the church that I oversee and I also founded in the year 2003, it has been spreading, and we are, as we speak now, in 4 different cities in Switzerland, and then we are in United Kingdom in the city of Bath, and we are in Ghana, West Africa. We have 3 churches there and still counting, and then we are in Chicago, United States of America. So we started basically 2003 in the nation of Switzerland, precisely in the city of Biel in Switzerland, and now we are spreading to different other nations. I often tell people that I am a little bit of opposite of many African people, because normally the African leaders will actually start their ministry in Africa, and then they start branching out to European countries and different nations of the world. But in our case, we started here in Europe, in the nation of Switzerland, and now we are branching to Africa and the other nations of the world. So the topic we are looking at today is how do we manage finances in the kingdom, and what is exactly God's money, what is exactly our money, and what is the right way of handling finances. Now, don't forget, there is nobody that is really an expert, so to speak, when it comes to this kind of question or this kind of point in terms of how do you manage finances. Because at the very beginning, when you are called into ministry, no matter what you learn in a Bible school or in a seminary, you are still, discovering quite a lot of things as you are in the field. You are making some mistakes and you are learning how you progress. So the very first thing that I would like us to look at for me was that when I was called, because my calling was such a dramatic one, because I was formerly a business person, owning my own, computer company, as a Microsoft system engineer in the city of Biel in Switzerland, traveling around the world, doing businesses and etc., etc. So when I was called, for me, the finances, so to speak, was actually not really there, because from one moment to the other, when the Lord called me, He actually close many, many, many doors for me in business so that I can answer the call fully. And many people can also testify to that very often when you are called by God, it doesn't allow you to come with all the wealth that you have maybe acquired in the world, because you might think that it is by your power, it is by your intelligence, it is by your wisdom that you are able, to finance everything you are doing in the kingdom. So very often He will actually start you up from zero in order to take you to hero. So in my case, it was the case, because even though I was doing very well, or maybe let's say doing averagely well in my ministry as a business person, because that's the way I see whatever God has called us to do at a time. I see it as a ministry. But I believe that I was doing okay, because I was able to keep the business going for several years. I was able to travel and go and buy, my products that I need from different nations of the world. And so it was not a bad business at all. But what I really realized is that towards the time I was going to answer the call, in case you have not heard, my story about how I was called into ministry radically, I guess you will find it also on our YouTube, But I want you to hear this, because that whole thing about the call, it's really something very powerful. But I want you to hear this about the topic of how do we handle God's money. I want you to understand that when I started the ministry, we really didn't have much. I can't say that we are very poor, but I can also not say that we are very rich. We probably can be in the place that we trust God every day for surviving, but He has always comfort. But let me guide you a little bit through how it all began. So from one moment to the other, God, gave us a revelation to go and rent a conference center, one of the prestigious conference center in the city where I live. Even though a lot of people offered me a free space, several people offered me a free space, and including some group of people that offered me to come and pastor them. Around the same time, God called me, and they will give me 5,000 Swiss franc, or equivalent of 5,000 US dollar every month. And this was probably a team of about 5 people, not more, but they were ready, to put their money together and pay me that amount. But the Lord told me to reject that offer, and the Lord told me to go the direction that He's calling me. And this is very, very, very important in ministry, because whenever you said God has called you, you must, number one, take off your eyes from money. Because if you are looking at money, I'm telling you, you will miss the call. If you trust God, He will lead you. Maybe sometimes the way He might lead you might not necessarily be the way that will be profitable at the very beginning, or might not necessarily be the way that will be glamorous at the very beginning. Maybe it might be a way that will take you through a journey of trusting Him every minute or every hour or every day, depending on what your case is. But at the end of it, it will be glorious. And that was my story, because like I said, I have a lot of financial temptation, so to speak, like the story of this group of women that was asking me, elderly women as a matter of fact, that was asking me if I can come and pastor them, and then they will give me a salary of about 5,000 every month. I rejected that. And parallel, there was another Christian organization called Open Doors that told me that they were looking for a pastor around that same time, and if I've been trusted to apply for the pastoral assignment in their organization. Of course, they were ready to pay me also some good, reasonable amount of money, but I declined that as well by the leading of the Holy Spirit. And so I had to start from zero. I have to start from nothing. And in the process, one of the things that the Lord laid in my heart was to go and rent this Congress house. And this Congress house, it's a real testimony, because the place was going out for about 800 and something Swiss franc, or 800 and something US dollar. The exchange rate is practically the same for those that are watching us from outside Switzerland and does not know the Swiss franc value. So when I went to this place, they told me that, renting a room there is going to be around 800 and something. But the Lord said to me, price them 150, which I did. And I've shared this testimony also in one of our brokers already. But anyway, back to the point. So what happened is that when I get this breakthrough that we can rent that place, we didn't even have the money, because the point is whether you are asked to pay 1,000 Swiss franc or you are asked to pay 150 Swiss franc. If you don't have it, you don't have it. So, but we trusted God, and we, made a contract with the, Congress house that we're going to use the place every Sunday, and then plus that, we had another miracle that they give us another second room, which the Holy Spirit asked me to rent. And that one, I asked them if they can give it to us for 50 Swiss franc, and which they agreed miraculously, was actually supposed to be exactly the same size. Actually, that room was supposed to be even more expensive than the other room, the room we rented at first, because that room was supposed to be used for children ministry, but it's already equipped with all the children ministry things you need, toys and every sophisticated things that you need for children ministry, because it was supposed to be a room that the people that come to that center, because that center have also a swimming pool, and so people that come to that center to use their gym, the fitness center, will also drop their children there. And there are some people that they pay that take care of the children. So on Sunday, they don't use those facilities. So because of that, they could give it to us. But because the things that they have inside are costly, it should have been even more expensive, because the room is the same size plus all the materials that are inside. But anyway, long story short, God, favor us. I want you to know, whenever God calls you, if He is the one that gives you the vision, He will give you the provision. That is number one thing you need to register in your mind. If God have called you to do something, no matter how big or small that thing is, He is able to provide. So now let's continue. Therefore, number one thing that happens in my case was that God showed me that He is the provider. He is Jehovah Jireh. So He was really, really providing, even though we were not receiving the money in a very large quantity, but it was always enough, because every time the month has come to an end, because we were paying monthly, which was a very good thing for us, because between the 1 month we could miraculously raise the money to pay for the whole Sunday service. But they were charging us every Sunday that we use the place, we have to pay 200. So practically we have to pay 800 every month, thereabout. And so God has always been faithful with that. But here is the point. The process itself was not easy, because you have to understand that when we started, we didn't have any of the musical set. We didn't have any of the gadget, so we basically have to go and dismantle the music set that I have at home, because I always love music. So growing up as a business person, I make sure I have one of the best music set in my house as of the time. And so we have to dismantle that. And that's the point, to be able to let go the material things for the sake of the kingdom, also demonstrate where one heart is, because the Bible made us to understand that where your treasure is, there your heart is. And we believe that opposite is the case also, because where your heart is, there your treasure will also be. So that's what we did at the very beginning, and therefore the process of doing a lot of things for God was just trusting God all the way, trusting God all the way. But now let's get to the clear ways of the, questions that maybe some people might be asking. How do you get income in ministry if you are called, and how do you manage those income? So I will try to, begin or attempt to discuss on this point, but like I said, we're going to have several parts in this regard, so don't miss the next week one, because we're going to have the continuation next week as well. But the first part is that first of all, we need to be prayerful, because we are only a manager. God is the owner of his church. And so we need to be prayerful. We need to be communicative with God to know exactly what he wants us to do at a given time. So one of the things that the Lord told us, of course, which is a biblical principle, is to learn how to give our tithes and offering. Now, the tithe and offering, if you are starting a ministry and you really want to be blessed, number one thing is make sure that you yourself are a tither. What do I say? Make sure that you yourself are a tither. So whether you are starting a church, as a ministry, a church, or you are starting a business, like I told you before, whatever you are doing, if that is what God has called you to do, is a ministry that you are in, So I see business as a ministry. When I'm mentoring people, I tell them that whatever we are doing in the 7 mountains of the society, the 7 mountains of the society being the family, the media, the economy, the government, the religion, all the 7 mountains of the society. Whatever you are doing, see it as a ministry, because if you don't see it as a ministry, you will be missing out. So number one, make sure that you yourself, you are a tither. So that is one of the first things that we need to understand. Now, I'm going to tell you what we all need to do, but then we are going to look at, if you are a pastor or even a business person, how do you then manage the fund, so that the fund or the money that you are receiving, how do you manage it so that it can bring more blessings, or it can yield more finances? Because the way you manage the finances is very important. But first of all, let's talk about how do you sow, how do you give. So first of all, be a tither. Then number 2, whenever God has asked you to do something, or you have an idea and you know that this idea is a good idea, the very first thing that will come to your mind shouldn't be the money. The very first thing that will come to your mind should be, is God in this? So the very first thing you need to do is to go and pray. You have to really pray hard and ask God, is this you? Are you calling me to get into this? And then if God confirms that is the one that is calling you to do that, then you proceed. So don't get involved in doing things that will involve finances when you have not double sure or double cross or double check that indeed God is the one behind it. Hallelujah. Once you understand that God is behind it, then you move to the next. And then the next thing you need to do after you have confirmed that God is behind it is now to begin to ask God to show you the strategy, the technical know-how. You have to show you what is the step to take, and I'm telling you, this process and these procedures are really going to be very helpful for you if you can slow down and don't move emotionally but move spiritually, because it is the spiritual that govern the natural. So once you can move spiritually, you will see that step by step, we begin to reveal to you. God will begin to show you, things that you will go the way that you will not make a mistake. For example, when we started our own church, very first thing we discovered is that God was the one that told us exactly where we have to go and rent. And so even though that place was very expensive for people that were starting like me, even though there was a church that was offering us their basements, that basement means their underground place to use for ministry, the Lord told me to reject it, because it was later on the Lord told me that if we have accepted to go and start our ministry in the underground of that church, there is no way people would have seen us to come to us, and there is no way we would have been where we are today. And there is no way our mind, the way we think, would have been thinking in the dimension of mega and buying properties and etc. etc. Our thinking would have been minimized. And then number two, there was also another church that offer actually their same church premises or their church auditorium, that when they finish service we can use it for free. We accepted initially when we are not yet a church. Before you become a church, you were fellowship. We were a fellowship. We were meeting like every month, having program. We were using their place for that. But when we were getting ready to become a church, to meet every Sunday, the Lord told us to move out of there. We should not accept that offer neither. So it's very important to know that you must not go for the easy way. You might be going for the hard way. If it is the will of God, God will be with you. And so this is what happened, that it helps us to go that direction because we know that God was the one leading us. So don't forget about that. That is important for you, first of all, to pray, to be sure that is the will of God, that God is the one that is calling you to go into that assignment. Number two, to be sure that you are using God's strategy, because God's strategy might not be the easy way. It might be the harder way, but if it is God, then He's setting you up for a victory. And then the third thing that will happen, and which also was our own procedure, was that God will begin to suggest to you the kind of things you have to do. For example, when we begin to step out in ministry, the very first thing the Lord told us was to organize a conference that cost us $53,000. You heard me correctly. And as of this time, we were barely 1.5 years old. Barely 1.5 years old. And God told us to organize a conference that will cost us $53,000. And so a lot of things were credited, a lot of things was on faith, but because God gave us that strategy, guess what? To make the long story short, at the end of that conference, we had covered our budget and we have 13,000 surplus. And then God gave us another strategy where to put in that money. He said we should give away that 13,000. So you see the process, how God builds, because very often people think that when we say God is behind you and God is the one building, that you will never need to struggle with money. You will never need to have any challenges of money. Everything will just come easy, and God will never tell you to do something that you don't have money for. It's not true. It's not not true. It's not true. If God is leading you, the one thing you will be rest assured is that at the end, you will always be victorious. So that 13,000 that we have surplus, God told us to give it away to Daystar Television as a first fruit, to give it away to Daystar Television. So I want you to know that if God is the one leading you, he will give you step by step what to do with his money. Then hang on that, because by the next week, as we continue with this segment of behind the scene, we're going to be sharing more in detail with you how you receive and manage God money. Until we come your way again next week, if nobody have ever told you that they love you, take it from us. We love you. We love you. We love you. Shalom.